If you don't have safe, stable, and decent affordable housing, there's numerous demographic studies that show that that has deleterious effects for you the rest of your life.
I met with a lady this morning at the mailbox. She's been here for 18 years. She got cancer. She don't know where she's gonna go. She got to be out on the same letter right here, May 31st. You got the same letter. She got to go. She is like 79, 80 years old, and she barely can walk, but she said she don't know what she's gonna do and what's gonna happen to her.
Some people left immediately because they were terrified. Persons without Social Security card just disappeared.
I know some of the neighbors didn't have any place to go. Had to just throw their things away and go whenever they could. Some of them end up going to the shelter.
This ain't fair. This ain't fair. Now, us poor people, we're trying. We are going out here. We're trying to better ourselves. We're trying to find a new way.
It feels like we're being thrown out on the street and everyone's turning their back on us.
One of the big issues when we build new affordable housing is how do we put it in locations with access to kind of opportunity, meaning good schools, jobs, transportation, all of those things. So a lot of effort goes into trying to figure out the best places to put these things. Ironically, this was a great place, and now it's gone.
There's just waves of impact here from this social change that's going on now.
Just think about the families that could have been, torn apart, especially, your from kids and your school and your friends and jobs. And
the Crossroads displacement had a huge impact on Richfield public schools.
We had actually made a large investment in classrooms and adding classroom teachers to try to reduce our class sizes, to try to increase the individual attention to each of our students. And then unexpectedly, we learned that approximately 140 of our students would be impacted by a large transition to a housing change that we hadn't known about.
We had 140 school children here who were asked to leave within 30 days. And the superintendent did intervene that, and he asked that they please allow the school children to complete the school year.
From a student perspective, we actually lost over the course of that year to the launch of this year 51 of our students. At least 30 of those didn't make it through the school year. And so while we worked together with the city of Richfield and we worked with the Crossroads concierge folk to try to maintain as much educational stability as possible, I think many of the students and families seeing the writing on the wall of that particular property made plans to transition their housing during the course of that year.
Just think of the disruption for all those kids having to change to a new school system and the setbacks that typically revolve around that.
For students' ability to perform, to advance in school and really get out of school what they need to get so that they can join the workforce and be productive, that gets eroded incredibly.
Mis hijos no sé a qué escuela ahora los voy a llevar, tienen que empezar de nuevo todo.
My kids, I don't know what school they're going to go to. They got to start from all over again. That's just how it's got to be for them.
Estaba feliz aquí, pero
he's happy here, but we gotta go.
The next year, with the loss of enrollment, we ended up losing not just teacher FTE, but 31 staff between licensed teachers, non-licensed teachers, and administrators.
So in the legislature, we provide the funding for each kid. That kid brings those dollars to the school. If the kid leaves the school, the kid is taking the dollars with her.
I read the requirements of housing. It's basically an apartment complex that doesn't have children. Our number of students coming from that complex has gone to almost nothing. And that impact continues to be felt as there are not families obviously moving in, and so ongoing there is that reduction in enrollment that doesn't impact us just one time, but now families aren't refilling those spots, and so it's sort of a long-term negative impact on the district.
The same is true for business in the area. A lot of the business that cater to these particular families that were living there, the small store, the small panaderia that was thriving, is no longer there. They have to move to where the families go. And that really, creates an economic decline that it is very problematic for communities.
Some of the people have come to worship with us. If they want to keep coming, we actually have to go pick them up because there's no public transportation, especially not on weekend. We're a small community, so the ramifications are just immense.
If that is the church you went to, the schools your kids attended, the businesses that you've created as a community or frequented and supported, I would imagine that there are all sorts of negative consequences that come from being dispersed.
It is a significant issue in economic terms, in academic terms, in terms of health for all the communities that are impacted now.
These are the properties or the homes that are occupied by our newest immigrants, by the multi-generational lower income households. Maybe they haven't had the advantages of a master's degree or liberal arts education, so they're working service jobs, they're working in hospitality, they're working in manufacturing. And that population really is the bulk of our workforce.
People who are working hard every day, and yet they cannot afford to pay the rent.
Because we've concentrated affordable housing in these places, when this happens, it has a huge ripple effect on those populations. So the fact that we've had policies that segregated people by race historically or by class, when these things occur, it has a huge negative effect.
The location was really good for them in terms of access to the things they needed close by. Now they're scattered all over the place, and it's greatly compounded the difficulties of their life of figuring out how do they get so much farther to their job, how do they get back to their doctor, how do they get to the grocery store. They don't all have cars, they're dependent on public transportation. It's a big challenge.
The market conditions have changed rent levels, and I think it's exposed a whole set of renters that maybe were right on the edge, not a lot of extra disposable income, and it's pushed them to a point now where it's like, it's tight, getting by. It's a huge group of people that have pushed to that point.
And so now they're out in a housing market in which they are going to be stretched even thinner, reducing the margin in their life even more.
But when households are paying at 50% or more of their income on rent, there's not a lot of room for other things that we need for daily life. And this becomes a very hard pressure for households to undertake.
When you look at those statistics about what compromises people are making just to maintain housing, you might be able to imagine that a family can sustain, a month of not going to the doctor or a month of being extra frugal at the grocery store. But if this becomes a steady state and you're making those compromises, this is something that we will see come back to the public sector in much higher costs in the long run.
What happens if this neighborhood transitions, if this neighborhood changes, if this building is sold? We know exactly what is going to happen. Hundreds, thousands of families are going to be displaced, and we don't have a plan B for these families. And so increasing poverty, these families are displaced, many of them will be homeless.
Most of the time that, they're applying that they having problem, just finding housing, period. So we get quite a few people that really come in, with the problem of housing and affordability. Once they leave work, they ride the train back and forth till it's time to come to work again, and they're a disaster when they get here at 10 o'clock. They're very unproductive and they're hungry.
These children will not do well in the schools, and then we're going to have school dropouts, and that increases the numbers in our prisons, and that is the consequence that we pay, and as taxpayers you pay more.
And so we can't pretend that the consequences are not going to come back to each and every one of us.
It's sad because here was community.
Yeah, it was community. It was.
Everybody knew everybody.
Yeah.
It was nice. Yeah, I mean, it was hard to leave because a lot, I'm going to say friends. My friends were here. It was just a safe place and a home. And it was really nice, and I liked that. And they don't, it's not going to be here like that no more.
Ahora que todos nos separamos, ha sido un tanto difícil.
Now it's difficult because now we spread out. We don't have the same support, our families, our neighbors, our community. We used to take care of each other's children and so on, and now we don't have that. We're divided.
Como nos conocíamos, cuando hacíamos Por ejemplo, una carne asada.
We used to have lunches, picnics, and enjoy each other's company, and we will watch each other's kids and children, and that was fun and safe. Now, at the places that we are, it is a different story. We might have to face challenging situations like paying for daycare and all of those expensive things that we used to enjoy for free. And now it is difficult because where we're going, there is not the community that we built here.
So you see a community being torn apart.
And you have a whole group of people that end up being displaced in a situation where there's very little affordable housing to begin with.
Where you gonna go? I mean, you're making $9.50 an hour. That's not quite gonna get you a good place to stay and food on the table.
Fewer and fewer affordable units and more people competing to try to get into them.
Then another complex is doing the same thing where it's sold and people are being displaced. So there's more competition. And yes, and these other apartments that know what's going on are taking advantage and raising the rents.
In the past 2 months, I got shown one place. Okay, now mind you, I've applied everywhere.
There's no guarantee that there's, any vacancies, available that may accept Section 8 housing. It's going to be pretty hard.
You're forced to move in neighborhoods that you don't want to, reside in.
They don't got no choice. We're left where nobody wants to be.
Desafortunadamente, al lugar donde nos...
Unfortunately, the place where we're at right now, it was much worse. The new place has been a bad experience overall. The rent is higher, there is not the same safe conditions for our children especially. Not a good experience.